Club. We are live on Wednesday night. Am I getting the day right, Harry?
Yes, you are.
So it's really lovely to have you. Tell us a little bit about 48 Hours Then She Dies and about the other books in the series.
Okay, so not sure how well you can see that, but this is my latest book released on Saturday, the 5th, 48 Hours and Then She Dies. Um, it's number 4 in the series. My series is Detective Mel, short for Melissa Cooper. The catch line for her is she takes no crap, not even from the bad guys. It's a split timeline thriller. I'm from Leith originally. Leith is the port for Edinburgh. And I set the start of it in 1966 when I was little. And then linked it. Well, the start in 1966 is an elderly gentleman is murdered and his body's dumped in the docks. But that links to kidnapping in the present time, and it turns out that the kidnapper is the grandson of the man who ended up in the docks.
Which isn't a spoiler because we found that out really quickly.
You do. You find that out straight away.
Yeah.
So the reason he's kidnapped her is he wants to. The crime was never solved. His grandfather's murder was never solved, and so he's kidnapped this woman to force the police to reopen the case. And what he's basically said is, you've got 48 hours, and if you don't solve it in 48 hours, she dies. And that's what it's all about, really. Anything else would be a spoiler, so I'll leave it there.
Yeah, it does make it tricky.
It does, yeah. But I guess the clue's in the title, and I'm a bit of a guy for doing that. For example, number 3 in the series is called "Yes, I Killed Her," and he does on page 1. And then the other 370 odd pages is about whether he gets away with it or not.
We've already got Patsy saying hi. She said, "Be sure of your sins. I need to get back into your series." So Patsy's Patricia Forsyth. She says she met you. Let me see. At Blackhall Library.
That's right. So Blackhall Library is in Edinburgh, and I met her there, and also ended up in the row behind her at Bloody Scotland last year. So hello.
We love Patsy, and it's always really easy to spot her because she just buys the most beautiful bright clothes, and she has her yellow crime shoes. So yeah, stands out in a crowd. We had a lot of fun at the Leeds event last year. We were roommates for the full weekend this year, and for half of the weekend last year.
All
we
right.
have a lot of fun. We we are not a good influence on each other.
Oh, that's terrible. That's really
I know.
shocking.
So much fun. We really do have a lot of fun. So let's go back to the beginning. So when I was looking into I always feel like a bit of a stalker doing research, but obviously we need to.
Yeah.
So when I started looking at you as an author and your bio and things, you used the phrase "cold turkey author."
That's right.
So explain that for us.
Okay, so cold turkey for authors. When I first decided to write a book, which was in 2014, I'd been thinking about it on and off for years and years and years, but couldn't get a story that held water, or that hadn't been done before, or that hadn't been overtaken by science or technology or medicine. And then came up with a story, and thought, right, I'll write this book. Now, all the advice that you read, not all the advice, but a lot of the advice that you read says, well, when you're starting to write, you should start with short stories or articles or novellas or, little bits and pieces to get your hand in. But I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to write a book.
Mm.
Now, there was no intention at that stage of it being a series, but that's another story. But I thought, well, I don't want to go through this sort of apprenticeship thing, so I just dived in and wrote the book, Cold Turkey for Authors. I made lots and lots of mistakes because I was learning as I went along, and some of those mistakes took a long time to undo and then sort of fix. And that book, I started it in 2014, and it took 4.5 years to finish. It was called Way Beyond a Lie. It's the story of a couple, the comparatively ordinary story of a couple who go supermarket shopping in their local whatever, and she disappears. And the question is where she's gone and why. And that was the book. It took 4.5 years to get out there. That included a lot of editing. It also included an attempt to get an agent, which didn't work. And then I went self-published with it. That's why it took so long. There was a lot of dead time in the middle. The later books didn't take so long, but that one took a long time. So that's the story behind it. I just jumped in, had no experience, no knowledge, and thought, no, just go for it. So I did.
So you must have learned a lot by learning as you went to write the first book that helped with each, subsequent book.
Yeah, definitely. The very first thing I learned about, although I was way through the book, was this strange thing called word count that I had never heard of. And it explained that if you're writing a crime thriller, word count should be somewhere between 90 and 105,000. But I was at 160,000.
Ouch. So lots of cutting.
Yeah. And I was working with an editor kind of casually at the time. And he said, there's this thing called kill your little darlings. And for anybody who's never heard of that, your little darlings are phrases, sentences, paragraphs, maybe even chapters that you love, that you have slaved over. You love them so much, you take them home to meet your mum. But if they don't help the story or the character or the setting, they've got to go. So I sent the book to my wife's Kindle, and we sat there every day for about an hour for about 3 months, reading it through sentence by sentence and killing the little darlings. We took 20,000 words out, still far too long, but it wasn't possible to take more out without destroying the book. So we just left it there. Now that's had a knock-on effect to, the number of pages in it and whether I can get it printed or not, without it costing about $15.99. But, it was my first book and I love it. And, I just left it there. So that was the Cold Turkey for Authors and the jumping right in. And one of the big mistakes was word count. Because the thing is, if you think about it, took me a long, long time to put those words in, those 20,000 words. Then it took me a long time to find the 20,000 words that needed to come out. Yeah. And then more time to take them out. And then more time to fix all the threads that hung off those 20,000 words. So the whole episode cost about a year. Now, it made it a better book. There's no question about it. But it was a lesson to learn. So the next 3 books are all neatly in between 90 and 105,000.
Have you found that easier after you've obviously, grafted on that first book? Did that make it easier knowing, because you'd had to remove so much and then unpick all of the threads and maybe lose some characters or, lose scenes that you started killing your darlings, you lose scenes and lines that you think are absolutely cracking.
Yeah.
Did that help a lot, having gone through that process with the next 3 books?
Yeah, because what you're kind of able to do, it doesn't work all the time, but what you're kind of able to do is assess them as you're going along and know, it's the 3 things: character, setting, story. So if you're blethering on a bit, that it shouldn't go in the first place. So you save all that time that I spoke about earlier on. So you do learn from that. You realize actually, yeah, this is very nice, but it doesn't hit one of those three spots, so it doesn't go in. So if it doesn't go in, it doesn't have to come out.
I was chuckling then because Patsy said I'm the bad influence.
Oh,
Can
right.
neither confirm nor deny.
No, quite
I
right.
think we're both as bad as each other, but yeah, I might have the edge. But she caves really easily to ideas.
I'll bet. Yeah, I'll bet.
One of the things that made me laugh, and it's either the first or second page. It's really early on. There's a line about old wives' tales. You know that thing about stepping out of the pub
Yeah.
and the air hits you and suddenly you're on the floor. Not that has ever happened, but
No.
no, never. But so the kind of the character in the story is saying, it's just an old wives' tale. I don't think it is. What do you actually think?
I don't think it is either. But I think actually you're probably well on before you go out the pub. It's a handy excuse, and I used it right,
It
as
is.
you say, I used it right at the beginning,
Yeah,
where
it really made me laugh.
the guy goes into a pub, and then ends up in a lock-in and comes out, in a bit of a mess. And it's quite funny, if I list, not list, but if I write some of these things, it's amazing how many people say, that's true. That actually happens. In the third book, Yes, I Killed Her, the bad guy thinks he's created the perfect murder. But in the end, I won't say how or when he gets caught, or even if he does, actually. But it's his arrogance that does him in. But he speaks at the time about things being too easy. And he's found it, because he did so much research into this, he's found it really easy to con the police. And he becomes annoyed because that's happened. And I related a story that I can remember my nana saying to me, bringing me this chain, a fine silver chain, and handing it to me and saying, "You've got nimble little fingers, son. Can you take the knots out of it?" It's a mess. It looked like a cat had played with it for a week. And she said, "Can you take the knots out of it?" So I was working away. But as it was reaching the end and I could see it was going to come out, it was, oh, that's annoying. I'm finished. And I met a pal at the weekend. I don't see him very often, but we were at a football match and I went to see him at half time. And he told that story. He said, "I'm exactly like that. If somebody, gives me a puzzle to solve, when it's getting towards the end of that puzzle and I can see I'm going to solve it, I'm disheartened now. My mood goes down." And this is what I said about the bad guy in Yes, I Killed Her, in that he found it kind of too easy to con the police, although he did a lot of work on it. And then his arrogance brought him down.
Sarah Blackburn, hi Sarah, has asked, how do you come up with a story? Do you get ideas from real life?
Hello, Sarah. Nice to speak to you. We converse on Twitter quite a lot. And Sarah's wonderful at recommending my books. Thank you so much.
Oh, lovely.
Where do the stories come from? Well, for any gentleman in the audience, when I go supermarket shopping with my wife, she can disappear in the blink of an eye. And that's where the story came from for Way Beyond a Lie. The couple go supermarket shopping, she disappears, and it's whereabouts she's gone. So I used to always find my wife in the next aisle or the aisle after that. But then it occurred to me one day, well, what if I couldn't find her at all? What if she wasn't in any aisles or the changing rooms or the toilets or the cafe or outside the car? What happened if I just couldn't find her? And that's where the story came from. And then it kind of grew arms and legs after that. And then I read, well, I'll go off to a wee tangent for a minute and bring me back on if I get lost. I only ever intended to write that one book. That was it. That was what I set out to do. And at the end, I thought, right, that's it. I've done that now. But there were two subsidiary characters in the book, my detective Mel Cooper and her sidekick Andrew Young. and they went down really well with the readers. Loads of people I didn't know got in touch with me and said, if you're ever going to write a series, then these guys have to have their own series. And I had to say, oh, well, it's not going to happen, actually. I'm just going to write this one book and that's it. But you can't stop the ideas coming. Another idea came along. I ran it past Her Majesty down the stairs. She said, that's a terrible idea. She was right, but we worked together and produced a better idea. And that became Be Sure Your Sins. So I haven't shown you this one, but I will do the blue one, Be Sure Your Sins. And it's about 6 individuals that suffer 6 events that destroy their lives. And Mel has to pull the whole thing together. And the reason I went for that was I read something once that said authors, unless you're just going to churn out book after book after book, like Coronation Street, you should be looking to do something different. So I didn't want it to be a serial killer, but I wanted it to be a serial crime. And that's where that one came from. And then Yes, I Killed Her is the story of the perfect murder. And we were watching Murder on the Orient Express on the TV on Christmas. And Poirot, of course, is very intelligent, but he's not got a lot of forensic science behind him, and he's not got technology. And I began to think, well, how on earth do you commit the perfect murder in modern day times when you've got CCTV, an electronic footprint like a Yeti? Forensic and digital science have moved on leaps and bounds. And I began to think, well, actually, I want to create the perfect murder. So that's what I did. And then the fourth one, well, again, looking for something different to do, I came up with the idea of a split timeline, or a dual timeline, I guess, is more accurate. Most of the story is set in present time, but about maybe 20% is set back in 1966. So that's where the ideas came from, Sarah. It's just trying to look for something different within the crime thriller genre, but and still with Mel and Andrew, but a different story, so that I'm not just, it's a murder that happens in a place, and like the start of NYPD Blue, it's always, always somebody gets bumped off, and Sipowicz is along having a wee look. So that's kind of where it all came from.
I really like the idea in this one. I've never seen anyone. We won't talk about the outcome of the situation, but
I've never. That's the outcome. The butler did it.
The butler did it. I've never seen this particular method used. Okay. Where did you come up? I think it's okay to talk about the actual.
No.
What?
In other words, what's happening to the kidnapped woman? No, I don't think that would be a spoiler. I think.
I thought just kind of the beginning bit and then leave out kind of where it goes, but no. Okay, that's fine. We will stay clear of that one.
Because you don't actually find out what's happening till about chapter 6 or 7. So I think it might ruin it. Where did it come from? I actually have no idea.
You can't say, because without being able to say what it is.
I can't, no. I think
you all need to go and read it, and then we'll have a private discussion.
It's not mentioned in the blurb. No, it's not mentioned in the blurb or anywhere on Amazon. So I'm sorry, but I think that...
No, that's fine. It's weird and wonderful. You all need to go and read it so I can talk to somebody about it. It's very, very different, is all I will say. Sarah's saying she's looking forward to catching up with Mel in book 4. Sarah, once you've read it, message me.
And me.
Yeah, of course. We were talking before we were live about have you ever been asked about why you move places around? So you have real settings, but you move things so that it works for the story, basically.
Yeah, I don't always do it, but this is in Yes, I Killed Her. So Yes, I Killed Her is where he bumps off his wife. So there's an area in Leith, it's called Trinity, and that's where he lives. And Trinity's very near, for anybody who knows the area, Trinity's very near the Forth Estuary. And then as you work away from Trinity, you're going towards the centre of Edinburgh. And we had Trinity, then we had the crematorium. Then we had a place called St. Mark's Park, but I turned it into St. Mark's Woods. And then we had the Water of Leith. And this isn't giving anything away because the Water of Leith is where they find her body. But the truth is, these areas don't happen in that order. So they happen in that order, actually, but I changed the order. I changed it from A, B, C, D to A, C, B, D, if you like. And I was doing a talk in a library in Edinburgh, a place called Newington. And a woman, when I do a talk, I only speak about myself in the books for maybe about 15 minutes, and then I always open it up to Q&A. I believe that the audience gets more out of the talk, and it's far more interesting for me too, if they get to hear the answers to their questions as opposed to me blethering on for an hour about crime writing. So this woman stuck her hand up and she said, "So you've set this in these areas," and she named them. And I said, "Yeah, that's right." "And you moved them around a bit." I said, "Yeah, that's right as well." And she said, "I was brought up in that area." And I thought, "Oh God, I'm in trouble now. She's not going to be happy." And she said, "So I'm really interested to know why you did that." And I explained it was to help the story. Things happen in chronological order in certain settings that in Edinburgh exist in the wrong order. So at the end of the book, I apologised to the citizens of Leith. I mean, I'm a native of Leith myself, so I thought that was okay. And I apologised and said, "Sorry for moving your town around, but I needed to do that to fit the story." So I just explained that to the woman because she hadn't read the book at that point in time. And I was wondering if I get a bollocking for that. But actually, I said, "I hope you're okay." She says, "I'm absolutely delighted. I don't care, actually, because it was so chuffed to read a story that was set where I was brought up." So it all worked out well in the end. But I think if you can explain a rational reason for doing that, it's okay, as long as people understand why you've done it. And it was to fit the story. So I have that license and I used it.
Yeah, there are obviously authors who completely, make up an area. I know we had Gordon Brown talking about some of his books, and the bar that the books are set in is basically in a car park in Spain.
Right.
It's just kind of, there's not anything there. And he shares the picture sometimes. I can't think it's car park or a bit of waste ground. So yeah, he wanted something completely fictional because of the things that happen in the bar. It was understandable. I know when we talked to Peter James, he said that he uses the real streets, but he'll add an extra house on at the end, so that the house number doesn't exist in reality.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of different ways of doing things, aren't there?
There are.
You have to be
I was talking
what
to an
you're
author.
comfortable with.
I was fortunate enough to get an author panel slot at the Portobello Book Festival at the weekend. And I was talking to one of the other authors there, and she created her own mythical village. And she said it took her a lot of work to actually create this thing or this place and, make it work. So I use real locations more or less, but I get a lot of really good feedback from people perhaps who don't live in Edinburgh anymore, who say part of the reason that I enjoyed that story or that book was that it brought back memories of places that I used to be at. And yes, I killed her. There's the part of the end of the story is set in a primary school in Leith, and it's a primary school that I went to. So I got in touch with the primary school and said, "Look, I'm really thinking about setting part of my story in here. Could I come and get a tour around?" Now, I've not been in the place for 50 years. I could still remember it, but it was amazing. I saw one of my old classrooms and the dining hall, and just got a real sense of how the place was, and it helped me to bring it to life in the story. So I don't mind using real settings, and I've never yet met anybody who did. But I want to just take you off to the side a wee minute. Peter James wrote a story, and someone told me about a woman who disappeared from a supermarket. And I thought, I'm going to get done for plagiarism here. But actually, my story was written first and I can prove it. So maybe I'll take him to court.
Right, I'm not going to encourage that, but absolutely not going to encourage that. But so many things have been done.
Yeah.
You know, there are so many things that, I mean, it's nice that you can prove that you did it first, but
Yeah.
there are so many things that, you know, having a new twist on something, it's always an exciting thing to find. And seeing the thing that we can't talk about from the book, that was really interesting because
Oh, thanks.
I've not seen that.
No.
You know, I've read a lot of books and
Yeah.
I own a lot of books. I could make a fort and live in it. I wouldn't, because that would damage the books, obviously.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. But there's nothing that's really kind of untouched completely. So I think you're safe knowing that whatever you write is going to be different to what Peter James writes, to what, you know, the next person writes. You all
I
get
haven't read the
your
book
spin
yet.
on it.
I haven't read it, but I will at some point.
Let us know what you think once you're done. Patsy was asking, she said, off piste, Harry, next year thinking of going to do an afternoon tea at the Charlotte Rooms in Leith, if you fancy it. So I'm sure she'll let you know when that's up and running.
Okay.
She does afternoon teas. Some of the other admins do afternoon teas in different areas of the country.
Okay.
I'm yet to do a Manchester one yet, but it will be coming.
Well, speaking about real life situations, Mel's, my detective's base is in Queen Charlotte Street in Leith, so it's just round the corner.
I thought you were going to have a longer thing then. Sorry, I was mid-sip.
Oh, did we catch you out? Sorry.
Oh, well, not going to be the first time. Another thing that made me laugh, and I wrote it down, a lager shandy was akin to a cocktail. I think that was quite earlier. I couldn't have carried on writing all the different lines down because I'd have just been there all day writing down the things that really made me laugh.
Well, you know, they do say that authors are a bit autobiographical. But Edinburgh, anybody who's from Edinburgh will have heard of a pub called the Diggers.
Okay.
Now, its real name is the Athletic Arms, but it's always been called the Diggers because it's right next to a graveyard. Now, it's an amazing pub. And if you and I were to walk in there tonight, even if it was queued back towards the door, and there was 10 rows of people in between us and the bar, all we do is hold up the requisite number of fingers, say 2, because what people drink in there is pints of Diggers Heavy.
Okay.
That's what they drink, mainly, like 99% of people. And there was an amazing article about, it's rocket fuel, by the way, it really is. It blows your head right off. But there's an amazing article written in the Evening News, the Edinburgh Evening News, or the Scotsman 30, 40, maybe even 50 years ago, that told the story of the Diggers. And part of the story was that the customer who asked for a pint of lager shandy was told that if they want a cocktail, they should try an establishment further up the street. Now, whether that's true or whether it's apocryphal, I don't know. But that's where that line came from. I just borrowed it.
Yeah, brilliant. I would imagine it's true. I was at a book launch a couple of years ago, not last January, the one before, I think. Rob Parker was releasing his book, which was called And Your Enemy's Closer. I knew it was behind me. I just couldn't think of the title off the top of my head. And there was a man at the bar who I had a pint of lager, which I'm only 5 foot, so, you know, it's as big as I am. And I ordered some water because I thought, I don't want a headache tomorrow. And the look that I got from ordering some water, that's what made me laugh, because it just reminded me of that. Yeah. It was just really funny. But he did forgive me when I explained I have to have some water, otherwise I'll be useless tomorrow. So he was just kind of chuckling then. But it really tickled me. I like things like that are, you know, a joke that anyone will get.
Yeah.
I like things like that. So you, actually, I wrote down something I wanted to ask you. QR codes on evidence bags. Is that a real thing?
Maybe. I don't know.
It's genius. But I didn't know if this was because I'll ask you about your research and your experts in a minute. But the QR codes, I was like, okay, that's interesting.
Well,
The chain of evidence.
I've got three. I've got three guys who are either ex or serving police officers who help me, and I was chatting to one of them one day, and the idea had occurred to me about chain of evidence and it passing from one officer to another, and I did wonder if it was still sticky labels and writing stuff down. So the idea of QR codes occurred to me, that there would be a QR code on the evidence bag that all the police would have an app on their phone, and they would just scan it, and then their identity on their profile on the phone would indicate by scanning the QR code that they were currently in control of that piece of evidence. So I asked this chap, Duncan, who he's one of the ones who's not still in the police, but he was a detective inspector, if that sounded plausible. And he kind of went, well, so he said, I imagine it'll happen one day. He said, it doesn't happen here in Aberdeen yet, but who knows if it happens elsewhere. But all my books have got a little bit of technology involved with them. Not a lot, because not everybody's into technology, but enough, I think, to interest people. And either the criminals use the technology to commit the crime or get away with it, or the police use the technology to catch them. And again, this is in Yes, I Killed Her. I wanted a piece of technology to do a certain thing, and I was convinced it could do it. Now, again, I won't say what it is, because it's quite fundamental to the story. But I have a pal called Chris, and Chris is the second person to read a draft of my book, and he looks for, my wife's the first, and Chris is the second. He looks for technical holes in the plot to do with technology and stuff like that. For example, I said in Way Beyond a Lie that a student in 1985 ended up getting jumped by a couple of villains and dropped his laptop bag. And it was pointed out to me by Chris that actually that was about 20 years before laptops even existed. So that was a big mistake I'd made. But he came along and said, oh, you know how you have said this piece of technology could do that? And I said, yeah. He said, it can. And what do you mean it can't? Of course it can. No, it can't. And here's why it can't. And I thought, oh, no. And he said, so you're screwed, really. You're going to have to go and think of something else. I said, no, I don't want to think of something else. We need to somehow figure out a way to make this work. And what we hit on eventually was creating a story by which it could work somewhere in the world, but hadn't quite reached everywhere in the world yet. And I had to make it plausible, because I think if the reader can't say it wouldn't, they'll just go along with it as long as it sounds plausible and genuine and believable. So that's what we did. And then I passed it back to him and said, right, what about that? And he said, yeah, it sounds fine. And then I was walking down the street, and we have 2 or 3 of my neighbours buy the books. And I met one of the neighbours, her name's Alison, and she said, I've just finished your book, I really enjoyed it. I never knew that thing could do that. I said, it can't. What do you mean it can't? I said, it can. She said, well, you made it sound like it could. I said, well, that's the point, isn't it? As long as I make it sound like it can, then you'll go along with it. So the same with the QR codes. I don't know if they exist or not, but if it sounded good enough to you, then it's fine by me.
It really did. And again, I've not seen it, and this is why I've not seen it. So it's such a good idea. I'm sure some police person somewhere will be able to tell us whether it is or isn't a good idea, and maybe you should have patented it. Maybe you should do that now.
I'll just nip off right at the end of this.
But yeah, I thought it was a great idea.
Thank you.
And it didn't even occur. I was like, how have I missed that this happens? I edit crime fiction books. I write things. Kind of, how have I missed this brilliant piece of technology? And you've invented it.
Sorry.
No, that's great. That's absolutely great. We've got Sarah's asking, are you writing Mel Book 5? I was going to ask you something else, but that's just caught my eye.
No.
Not currently.
No. So the plan is, so my mum's family emigrated to Scotland from Italy in 1900, along with loads and loads of other Italian families. And the guy who is in the last book, which is 48 Hours, Then She Dies, just to give it another wee plug, he's a grandfather and he's 65, and in 1966 he ends up in docks. I'm considering going back to 1900 and starting a book that stars that guy, but from the day he is born, which is New Year's Day 1900 in Naples, and then he moves to Leith with his family in 1902 or 1901 or something like that, which is the same thing as happened to my mum's mum. She was born in Leith. The first 3 or 4 were born in Italy, and the rest of the 21 kids that my great granny had were born
21.
21, yeah. My nana said to me, my mum was a hard woman, Alan. I said, well, I can probably go with that, Nana. Anyway, and then what I'm thinking about doing is creating a story for this guy over the next 55 or 65 years. I might change the timeline a bit, that follows real world events like the First World War and its effect on Leith and Edinburgh and Scotland, the Depression, the Second World War, and then Italy siding with Germany, meaning that all Italian males in the UK were interred from June the 10th, 1941, and some of them were shipped abroad, and some of them were sent to Isle of Man and Orkney and Australia and all sorts of places, and having the story run his life, culminating with him dying in the docks in 1966, or not, as the case may be. And it could be part of a trilogy. Obviously, he can't live for forever, but and I'm determined it will not be a poor man's Godfather. That is one thing I'm absolutely determined it will not.
Right, okay.
I don't saying you've just copied The Godfather. So before I started to think about this, I read The Godfather again for what must be about the 5th or 6th, maybe even more time, just to make absolutely sure I refreshed my memory, which was already pretty good, having seen the film about half a dozen times as well. So it won't be a poor man's Godfather, and he will have a completely different attitude to Don Corleone about how he lives his life. But that's what I'm thinking about doing. Now, Mel obviously won't be involved, but I'm thinking about meshing the, if you like, the start of book 4 with the end of book 5. I'm not sure yet. So that's the plan. I've got a Mel idea, and I did try to take, because I'm now self-published, I did try to take 48 hours out to agents to see if anyone was interested. No one was, so that's what's putting me off Mel 5. But that could change. That's where I am.
You're making me wonder how much time authors kind of have to spend making sure they're not rewriting something without meaning to. I saw a post from David Mark, author, today, who said he was pondering working on something and then found out that Ron Howard has just released the film of the book he was about to write. So he's not going to write that. He said it reminds him of the time that he wrote a thriller without realising he'd rewritten, I think it was Roadhouse. I can't think exactly what he said. So how much do you worry about that, and how much do you just get on with it? Because obviously you've done, some checks to make sure you're not rewriting things.
When it comes down to it, I think all crime thrillers the plots for every single crime thriller, or even thriller, stem from the 7 deadly sins. So there's a limit to, and someone once said to me, there are actually only 3 stories. In the world, there are only 3 storylines, but you just change it all. I don't worry about it too much because I can't possibly know. And there isn't, I don't think, a resource that you could type in, has anybody written a book about, Italians or fiction, Italians in 1900s or whatever. So I think unless you do know, you just go with it. I haven't done anything else anyway. And I don't think anybody would take me to court, but it would be so easy to prove you hadn't plagiarized something. I think, just keeping versions on your PC would be that's how I could prove to Peter James I didn't steal his story, whatever it is. But I don't worry about it really. I can't, I don't think. No, I just go for it. I don't think no one's ever told me that, oh, by the way, that story is just whatever. So just go for it.
Kaz says hello. Hi,
Hello.
Kaz. Patricia, Patsy says, Diggers, Hearts Football Club. Fiona, her late sister, and her partner loved it.
It's a fabulous pub. Yeah. It's on the wrong side of town from me, of course.
Me and Patsy are not going to that pub if that is rocket fuel. I drink very, very weak lager. That's all I really drink. So I don't think I can hack it anymore, Harry.
Oh. Well, give it a go. You never know.
Oh, no. Patsy, I'm not coming. I'm not going. Not doing it. One of the things we talked about a little bit before we started was the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing.
Yeah.
So how have you found this book?
So to go back in the story, the first book was self-published. Then I worked with a small publisher for the next two, and the first one. They picked that up too. And then through a combination of circumstances and perfectly amicably, like one or two of my author colleagues, I've moved away from the independent publisher. And I said earlier on, Rebecca was an absolute star.
She is.
Really brilliant. So now I have the fourth book, and it was ready before I split, but not polished. It still had a bit of work to do. One of the first problems I had was moving the books over on Amazon. And I alluded to this earlier on, because I have got, and I'm very proud about this, as a small author, I've got 2,500 reviews on my first three books, and they all rate 4.4 stars, all three of them. Now, the fourth one's far too young yet to worry about that, but
I am going to add in the line that I read that said 60% of those are 5 stars.
Yes,
which is
that's
excellent.
right.
Yeah.
Which it has to be really to be 4.4 overall.
Yeah.
But I'm very proud about that. And 2,500 reviews is a lot. And one of the things I checked out with Amazon before I took the publisher up on their offer was, can I move the reviews over? Because there's no point in having a book with no reviews. And Amazon assured me that I could. And then I went, that was in November last year. Then I went to a seminar in Edinburgh hosted by a high-hegian Amazon guy who was awful nice. I spoke to him at the end of it and explained my situation and said, well, I get my reviews. And he said, what have you been told? And I said, I've been told this. And you can probably guess the rest of the story. The publisher took the book down off Amazon. I put it back up on Amazon, approached Amazon and said, right, okay, can I have my reviews back, please? And they said, not possible.
Yikes.
And had it remained not possible, it would have been game over, because who's going to buy a book with no reviews, really? So the good news is a combination of the Amazon senior manager that I spoke about and the Alliance of Independent Authors, who again were stars, and one or two other people helping to nudge things along. Amazon eventually agreed that they would. But here's a word of warning for all you authors out there who might be thinking along similar lines. There are 3 things that you've got to make absolutely sure are correct, and they all fall under the heading metadata. And metadata, as far as a book is concerned, is the author's name, the title of the book and the subtitle. So, and they have to, when you put your version up, the author's name's not going to change, title's likely not going to change. As long as more than 80% of the book remains the same, you don't make whacking great changes to the text, they consider that as the same book. But what caught me out was the subtitle. And because Rebecca had taken the book down off Amazon, couldn't go and look at it, I couldn't possibly have expected her to remember what subtitle she put on it 2 years ago. That was the sticking point. And eventually Amazon caved and I got my reviews back. But honestly, if they hadn't, it would have been game over. I couldn't possibly have launched a self-publishing career. So we got over that. And then it's been a question of getting the book ready. And then I got invited to speak at Portobello Book Festival. And so I thought I'll tie in the launch with that. So that pushed things along a wee bit. And got 200 orders for paperbacks from my reading public who I'm in contact with all the time. And a week past Thursday, I think, which was about 7 days before the launch, 400 books arrived on my doorstep. Yay! Printed with the wrong title, cover.
So when you said to me before, right, I'm going to bring something up and I'm going to see what you think, you saw my face.
Yeah.
My face has subtitles.
So the cover, sorry, I said title, but I meant the cover. So the cover, various components to the cover. And working with the cover designer, because I wasn't entitled to the covers of the old books, so I had to get new covers. Besides, they needed a refresh, so that was fine. The cover designer, in implementing the last change I suggested to them, implemented that change and then reverted the whole book back, the whole cover back to a version about 5 ago, which I spotted because I got a proof copy printed by the printer and sent to me, realized it was completely wrong. And in trying to reconstitute that, between myself and the publisher the printer going backwards and forwards, they inadvertently and made an honest mistake, printed the books with the final change that I requested, which was tiny. It was a missing closed quotation mark. That's how anal I am. But then the wrong cover. Now, my first thought when I opened the box, because I guess a lot of people know what it's like. You open the box, you've got the books, yay! And as soon as I saw it, it was the back of the book, and this closed quote or the missing closed quote just jumped straight out, and I thought that's wrong. And then I turned it over, wrong cover. So I immediately panicked because I thought it was my mistake. I thought in all the changes, I thought I had sent them the wrong one. So straight onto email, found my email to them, found I had sent the right one. That was Thursday night. Sent them a oh my God email, which they got on Friday morning about 7:30. By 7:56, they'd agreed to, it was their fault and they'd reprint. It was printed on the Friday, packed on the Monday. I had them on the Tuesday.
Wow.
Fantastic service. If anyone is looking for a printer, the guys you want to speak to are called Imprint Digital, and they're based in Devon. Yes, they made a mistake. It was an honest mistake, but the quality of the customer service, to get there in the first place, they were always very good. But how about that for a reaction to fixing an issue? Just bang on. I couldn't recommend these guys highly enough. But it was a bit squeaky.
I bet it was, yeah.
We only got the books on the Tuesday, and then I was setting off for Edinburgh on the Friday morning to go to Portobello Book Festival, and I had a talk on the Wednesday. So funny. So all these things all together all constitute towards being self-published, because you've got to do it all unless you get help from or pay people. And I can't really afford to pay everybody. But now the book's out there. I'm getting lots of page reads. Got quite a few pre-orders. And for the moment, and now I'm battling my way through Facebook ads, and a Facebook post ad went live today. So we'll see what happens. I don't think I'll do as well as the publisher did, because they were throwing more money at it than I probably will. But the bottom line is, if this works, I'll be happy. And if it doesn't, hey ho, it won't break my heart. It'll be a shame, but hey ho. So lots of things have gone wrong, but they've all worked out eventually.
Yeah, it sounds like you really let lucky with that company.
I used them before. Be Sure Your Sins. I self-published that, and remember I said it was called. It was about 6 people who suffer 6 events, and then 6 lives are destroyed. So when I first published it, I called it 666, and I was recommended that printer by a chap in Aberdeen who uses them. That's where I live, Aberdeen, by the way. So I used them before, and I went back to them for this one. And when I have to recreate new covers and new versions of the other 3 books, which is what I'm going to have to do, I will be going back there, no question. Fantastic quality of service, amazing.
I love that. I love a happy ending in a book debacle.
Yeah,
there aren't
debacle, good word.
Debacle. Yeah, I'm quite pleased with that one. I don't remember I've ever said debacle before in my life. We've been here almost an hour now, so we've got a couple of minutes. Would you like to give everyone a quick reminder of what they're going to go and buy and where it's available? Because you are available or your books are on Kindle Unlimited as well.
Yes, all 4 books in the Mel series are available on Kindle as ebook, ranging from $1.99 to $2.99. They're all available on Kindle Unlimited. I'm still working through the somewhat tricky process of getting my books out in paperback. So if anybody does want a paperback, then come straight to me. I won't charge any more than Amazon would charge, which is $9.99, because that's what they were retailing at before, including post and package. And you can get me on info@harryfisherwriter.com. And they'll be signed, which they wouldn't if you were getting them from Amazon.
Did we actually talk very quickly about your author name, or did we just discuss this before we were online? We
discussed it before we were online.
So do you want to explain that one quickly?
Yeah, my author name's Harry Fisher. My real name's Alan Fisher. In my entire life, all 42 years of it, I have never once met another Alan Fisher. Never, ever, ever. I know they must exist. I've heard of a couple, but I've never met one. And before we came to self-publish Way Beyond a Lie, I thought I better check. And blow me down, was there not a self-published crime writing author in the north of England somewhere? Well, thank you very much. So we needed another name. My dog's called Harry, and so he got the gig. And actually, Harry Fisher is more gritty and more crime thrillery.
It really is.
Than Alan. But I have met a couple of people who think I'm called Harry and so is the dog, which is I'd have to be weird to do that, wouldn't I?
You probably wouldn't be the only person.
Well, who knows? That's where it came about.
I love that. So show us again the cover for 48 Hours.
48 Hours, then she dies. It kind of gives away the story right at the beginning. This bridge here is in Leith. All my books have got Edinburgh scenes on the covers, or at least the ebooks have. The new paperback covers, when they come about, will have the same covers, obviously. Trying to create a theme there.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who's watched and asked questions. And Patsy is going to be hunting you down for afternoon tea next year when she sets it up. And it's been really lovely to talk to you. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. You've been great to talk to as well. Thank you.
I've really enjoyed it. With the series.
Thank you very much indeed. Take care, everyone. Cheers.